Good morning. I just want to say I was trusted enough to come here and speak to me. I know I was a bit unsure, but I felt, you know what, this is something that I do. Just to introduce myself, I am ISSUES, and I am the founder of an organization called Kwanele Foundation. Okay. So within Kwanele Foundation, we have 4 main offices that we deal with. We've got an office called, before I talk about the offices, ours in Kwanele Foundation is about restoration and rehabilitation. And how do we do that? Because we've got a group of psychologists and a legal team that we work with. These are the people that we trust to help us bring forth rehabilitation and restoration. So within Kwanele Foundation, we have an office called Kwanele So Kwanele Foundation, that's because I, ISSUES, was a victim of GBVF holistically as an because I was given away to the church when I was 16, and then I stayed in the church. Later on, I discovered that it only made sense now that from Johannesburg, I was human trafficked to Nigeria. So for 10 years of my life, I couldn't account for my life. So that's why we have the office called Kwanele Foundation. As I said, Kwanele Foundation is about restoration and rehabilitation. And because as the founder, I went through this pain. I was provoked to say this foundation must be born for such a time as this, because I refuse to turn a blind eye to men, women, children who are possible victims of abuse at the hands of the church. Are we against the church? No, we're not. Are we against pastors? No, we're not. Are we against the religious sector? No, we're not. But we advocate and we are there to give assistance to people who are victims of abuse within the church. Then we have an office called Kwanele In-Laws. Now, Kwanele In-Laws, also again, I always say to people that you can't give what you don't have. Kwanele In-Laws, ISSUES again. When I was widowed, when my husband died, I experienced the most. I was disinherited of everything that was supposed to be coming my way. And in that moment when a spouse has passed on, you are not looking at your assets, you are not looking at things you must protect. You are going through your own trauma. So this office called Kwanele In-Laws, this is when we step in for men and women, because it also can happen to men. When someone has lost a spouse, through our legal and our psychological team, we are able to step in, intervene, assist the widowed person, because we found the husband dies today, tomorrow she wakes up, someone else is the executor of the property. Someone else has done something else. So we are there to advocate psychologically also. Then the last 2 main offices that we have is Kwanele Ntombo and Kwanele Ntsizo. Now, Kwanele Ntsizo and Kwanele Ntombo, this is close to my heart because I'm an educator by profession. So this is when we have began dialogues of gender-based violence and femicide at the classroom level. So we've adopted the former school I taught at in Innerdale, and we go there, we start, because when we checked around, our Department of Education, they don't really narrow into these issues of gender-based violence and femicide. And records and research has showed us everything big starts small. For a man or a woman to be a perpetrator in their old age, something happened when they were young. Nobody was there to say, this is not okay, don't do this, and try and find them, try and show them the way. So this is me just basically introducing myself to you guys to say who I am, what we stand for as an organization. Most people say to us, the narrative mostly, especially now in 16 days of activism, the narrative is women are being killed, women are being abused. And I always say that that narrative is wrong, it should never be condoned, because there are men who also are abused. There are men also who are victimized. There are men also who are victims of gender-based violence and abuse. And that is why I challenged the government and I said to them, this 60 days of activism, for me, it's just a facade. Because why do I say it's a facade? I say it's a facade because people get abused 365 days in a year. And the only people that are being highlighted or amplified, unfortunately, are women. Why? Because women, we tend to be able to speak and have the voice and make noise about it. But men, you tend to keep quiet. And some of the reasons, maybe it's because, how will I tell my friend that I'm being abused? How will I tell my neighbor that I'm being abused? I've had conversations with station commanders where they say they don't get cases of men coming to the police station to say I was raped. Because people don't amplify those stories, that men also do get raped. Young boys do get raped. I'll give you an example. There's a case we're currently dealing with, a school in Johannesburg. A young boy in grade 2, listen to me, grade 2. This young boy, every time he comes to school, he likes playing with the older boys. He likes playing with the elder boys. And when he plays with the elder boys, why? He wants money. So when the teachers were observing, this boy wants money because at home, the transport driver that takes him from home to school is the one that every time he rapes the small boy. After raping him, he gives him money. So the small boy now has normalized this as a normal behavior, to say it's normal. So every time he sees an older man, he goes to them and says, I'm going to be mad. And the older man is like, don't be mad. And the boy will literally take off his into because now he's ready and he wants the action. So we were called on board as the Kwanele Foundation for intervention. And fortunately, the child was taken into safety, number one. The child went through the assessments they had to go through. But now imagine the trauma of this young boy. Imagine the trauma. Imagine now, he has to now unlearn that which he was taught. Transport driver is nowhere to be found right now. He's still out on the large. He's still being looked for. So that is why when we say we start these conversations at school level, we need men like you to support us when we do these things. Because when we have these conversations, it's mostly women that are there. Men are not there. Men somehow shy away from it. I don't understand. I myself, I'm raising 2 kids on my own for 5 years. My husband died in 2016. For 5 years, I'm raising a boy child. You know, called names, everything. But guess what? 5 years later, my son is 11, he's turning 12. My daughter's turning 8. And every time, you know what you guys do? You will say there's a father and son camp. There's a father and son bride. There's a father and son this. When there's just women who are single, who are raising boy children. How about men start a narrative where even if you have a father and son camp or a father and son bride, surely there's somebody you know in your neighborhood who is a single mother who is raising a son. Why, I challenge you, why don't you take time to say, I want to mentor your son? Or I want your son to come close, because I know I learn as I walk. I learn as I walk. Just now he had to go for circumcision. I learn as I walk. But we need men that will stand up and say, not only are we discussing issues of gender-based violence and the depression that men go through, but we must be boys without fathers. Because not to say some of the fathers are dead. Some of the fathers are just not there. You know, we talk issues of, right now they say 16 days of activism, the theme is awareness to accountability. As men, surely we know of a man, a friend of ours, who is abusive. Remember, I always say to people, gender-based violence doesn't start by when you already beat someone up or when someone is beating you up. It starts by the things we say, the toxic things we say. Do you know there are men out there who are verbally abused on a daily basis, but they will never speak about it? I get shocked sometimes when men come to our offices and they'll sit and say, I love my wife or I love my girlfriend. I'm at the brink of doing something because this woman, she has nothing good to say about me. But then because of the confidence that they have in us, we then take these men through psychological intervention. We bring forth the partner for them to go through psychological intervention themselves. But gender-based violence starts by things we say. You know, that you might find it okay. You know, sometimes these things, you see a beautiful woman walking in the road and then you say, some women don't like that. And I don't think it should be condoned. Why don't you be man enough to come to me, approach me? Be man enough to come to me and say, Sihle, wow, I think umuhle and I want to be a part of you. Let's unlearn things that we grew up knowing. We grew up in a society where it was okay for, I'm sure we watched our fathers hit our mothers. We watched our uncles hit our aunts. As a result, as a man, you grow up thinking, that is okay. Because you saw it happen. As much as with women, I always say with women, I'm a Zulu girl, but I grew up in an environment where, yes, my father used to beat my mother up. Yes, my aunts and I'd watch their boyfriends beat them up. And you grow up as a woman wanting to have a man. You meet a sweet man, a very sweet man. But as a woman, you do everything in your power to provoke him so that he can just hit you. Because it's what that's what you grew up in. Your language of love is what you saw of a man hating a woman. Back to men again. You then want to beat women up or you want to beat a man up because remember, relationships are not only with women, there are men who are dating men. That's why we also acknowledge the LGBTQIA+ group. So you want to beat up your partner because this is what you grew up seeing. This is what you grew up, which is embedded in you. But when will it stop? When do we say as men, we need to unlearn that which we saw our fathers do, that which we saw our parents do? Because it's a different century. You know, I know people will say the other day I was in a meeting and they said gender-based violence is an old age syndrome, meaning it's been happening from Emandu or from long time and it was tolerated. But you know why it was tolerated? When we get married, if I marry you, there's a time after the white dress where a woman is being given a traditional attire, then they will separate us, right? You guys know of that. Then and then they'll say they're going to give men the tips or whatever. But you know what they say to us women when we go through those processes? They'll say to you, one, trigger point. Indoda uyibuza ukuthi buya. Indoda uyabekezela as long as abuyile endlini walala be happy. Which is wrong. Because I can only but imagine if that's what they're saying to us women, what are they saying to you men? They're saying, now you have her, she has your surname Kimusabi, she's obliged, she's mandated to do ABCD. So maybe that's why some men think it's okay to come home. Because behavior also, these are red flags and red lights of gender-based violence and femicide. You know? For me, all I can say here today is to say, let us be courageous enough to speak out. Let us not allow ourselves to keep quiet when we know, holding my best friend, Mujigawa next door, Ushapa Musadiwa higher, and I'm choosing to keep quiet. Let us, it's not enough if we're going to have many dialogues and then afterwards, then what? Then what? Let us be bold enough to call each other out. To say, hey man, you're my friend, but the way you tell on media how, the way you're treating your wife is not okay. The way you talk to your wife is not okay. The way you're doing things is not okay. You know, let us be a group of men that stands up for each other and say, even when we see boys in the street. I don't know. Sometimes when you walk around the street, you see young boys, babanyani, they start smoking, babang, others are drinking whatever they're drinking. Let's not normalize that. Let us stand in the gap. But in final saying, in closing, everything starts within. Everything starts within. So if within you are not healed, if within you have not dealt with your childhood traumas, if within there are issues that you haven't dealt with, there is no way, no matter how many dialogues you will have, no matter how many speakers there will be called, there is no way that change will happen. Mine is to say, let's take time to deal with inapalati way, to take time to deal with yourself within, you know, because you need to shout out. Go see your local clinics. Obviously, I'm sure there are social workers today that you can speak to. If not social workers, the churches. If not the churches, I'm glad there's a men's forum like this. Start talking within yourself. Identify the issues that you have. That way, when you start talking, it's a greater step and it's a first step for you to get healed, so that the generations yet unborn will not scream one day and say, you kept quiet and did nothing, when the abuse of men and women was continuing.